Thanks for staying with us. Let's continue then with some analysis of the progression of the ANC's economic outlook and policies since the inception in 1912. We'll speak to Dr. Lumkile Mondi, an economist and senior lecturer at the Wits Business School. Good evening to you, Dr. Mondi, and thank you so much for your time. So we were in conversation earlier on with Angelo Fick, and he talks about, the politics and the machinations of it all. But before we even get into issues of the economy, one wonders, because as we are hearing from the ANC president that on Saturday, this is a moment that they're going to take to reflect on where they find themselves as a party. And I wonder how much of this reflection could overshadow some of the challenges and policy and, economic policy positions that South Africa desperately needs when it comes to addressing some of the challenges.
Good evening, and thanks for having me. It is very, very clear to many South Africans that 30 years later, the ANC has been dismal in terms of ensuring that the ills of the past, the marginalization of Africans, the high levels of unemployment that we experience under apartheid, the access to education, and many other facilities, whether it's health, it's housing, that it's been dismal. That in that regard, that's been also confirmed by the outcome of the election on the 29th of May, where many South Africans are very optimistic about the possibility of the ANC bringing a better life to all, as they promised over many, many years. So really, it's an organization that is in disarray, has got no plan for economic development and inclusion, and the participation of the black majority in the economy. And therefore, I think going forward, as we've seen on the 29th of May, 2024, it's a party in decline. And all of us are looking at a multi-party secular solution with the hope that a multi-party solution may yet focus on people, and focusing on people, making sure that there's access to services, basic services universal, that economic opportunities are created, education is accessible to all, as well as health and other basic social services, including housing.
So what does it mean then for what we heard the ANC president say earlier on, that economic transformation, that's an issue that they, are looking into right now, and even echoing what the Youth League has said there?
Unfortunately, when you talk about economic transformation, in areas where we could have made a big dent, these are areas in the ICT sector, where, in fact, the MTNs, the Vodacoms, as well as telecoms have played a critical role. We have seen a significant impact among black South Africans. We know that people like himself, the president, was the chairman of MTN for many, many years. We know about the very good stories, Phuthuma Nhleko, and many others who have really seen enormous benefit from the ANC policies. But that has not gone across to other areas, particularly in areas of ensuring that the logistic chain is efficient, and the poor majority of South Africans have got access to cheap and easier transport. Electricity, water remains a challenge. So overall, when you're talking about transformation is not only about controlling the economy. It's about the majority of South Africans participating. And we know that people like me and you, Bongiwe, are better off. But we know that there are millions of South Africans who will never participate in this economy because the ANC has reinforced the apartheid structural issues. It never transformed it. What it did was it continued on the same model and deepened the marginalization of Africans. And therefore, until we deal with that, we're going to continue seeing a few elites like ourselves benefiting, while the majority remain behind, are trapped, and they remain hopeless to the possibility of freedom bringing economic opportunities for them.
And especially when you think about how far people, live from economic opportunities and the places where they work and spatial planning, still being an issue right now in 2024. Let's talk about another issue that was high on its agenda last year when it tabled its January 8th statement. It was the issue of load shedding, and it said that it wants to deal with this energy crisis decisively. Some say that this goal has been met, but others are saying, yes, it's been met, but not sufficiently enough to convince South Africans that we may not find ourselves plunged into darkness. What's your take?
In fact, here we have to really commend the president of the ANC and the president of the country by at last having himself been party to the deployment of incompetent people in various state OEs, SSOEs that have collapsed, that the penny dropped and made a call to a critical individual who has contributed to transformation of ESCOM, Mteto Nyati, who, according to him, had asked the president that he needs no political interference. He's an engineer, he's a professional, and he needs to have that space to work with black professionals at ESCOM and many other professionals to ensure that they can address the efficiency challenges at ESCOM. And the president gave him that. I think by his leadership, President Ramaphosa giving technocrats to do what they know best and provide the efficiency that they've seen at ESCOM, at the same time giving many professionals who never participated in state capture and corruption an opportunity to apply their skills in making sure that there is no load shedding. So it is that leadership that he provided there. But also a lesson learned very late because he chaired the Development Committee under Zuma and was dismal, and hence the collapse that we've talked about. But at least we commend that he's allowed ESCOM to do what ESCOM is doing now. We also see some gains at PRASA, as we've seen in the city of Cape Town particularly, and some few successes here in Gauteng, in the Naledi Johannesburg line, and recently in the Lens Johannesburg line, where we're seeing some progress. But Ramaphosa and many others in the ANC contributed to the destruction of that critical infrastructure and impoverished many South Africans by making sure that transport became expensive and dependence on taxis and buses, when rail that can take hundreds of thousands daily of South Africans was destroyed through the deployment of the ANC of incompetent leadership in those SOEs.
And finally then, Dr. Mondi, because last year they were talking about reconstructing the economy to create more jobs, and we now, of course, are seeing what's happening, and even with the number of young people who are unemployed. I wonder how much of the statement as well, when it comes to addressing issues around the economy and economic participation, for example, of young people, could also be possibly stifled or challenged by the fact that they are now in a government of national unity and they may not necessarily fully implement what they're looking to do.
In fact, we're encouraged by the GNU. The GNU is an enabler for economic development. The ANC 30 years has been dismal, and hence it lost a significant support in 2024. So this is political speak on Saturday by the ANC, knowing that its record economically has been dismal and therefore really much depend on the other partners to assist it and in achieving the key objectives of the revolution, being economic participation, being access to basic services, which the ANC has been dismal. So they must say thank you to South Africans that 30 years later they woke up and said, you know what, we can do better by making sure that we keep the ANC, which was very good in liberating us and has been dismal in running a democratic country and in bringing jobs and inclusion, which the apartheid had marginalized many black South Africans and therefore reinforced that oppression by destroying key infrastructures, I've said. They must just say thank you that was genuine, and thank you South Africans that you saw through us that we're good at liberation, but in running an economy in a democratic environment, we are failing. Therefore, we need the other partners to come along and make us look good, and hopefully will deliver on the services that Mandela and many other comrades fought for in the liberation struggle.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Mondi, for your time. And let's see then what's in store for, the members, also described as cadres of the ANC.